All right, so I will be ranking the 11 sieges of Belgrade. I've listed them chronologically, and as you can see, the date of the siege, when the siege began, um, is listed at the top. And then we have the attacking side at the top with an arrow. Now, the arrow, if it's crossed out, that means the siege failed, the attacker failed. And at the bottom, we have the defender of Belgrade, who is defending Belgrade. So first we have the 1440 and the 1456 sieges. These happened pretty close to each other time-wise, and they're pretty much both have the same story. So basically, after the fall of Smederevo in 1439, the Ottomans, obviously since Smederevo is really close to Belgrade, decided to go after Belgrade, and since Belgrade is a really important strategic city and fortress in the Balkans. Grabbing Belgrade pretty much secures you at the Danube and allows you to take over pretty much all of the Balkans. And so this was a pretty important battle. And yeah, after the fall of Smederevo, the Ottomans tried for 6 months. The siege lasted for 6 months, but the defenders, which of course were the Hungarians and the Serbs. The Serbs were just defeated in Smederevo, so they fled to Belgrade to defend the city. And by the way, until 1521, when the Ottomans finally took Belgrade, it was all under the Hungarian rule. So this whole time it was under the Hungarian rule, which is pretty weird that Hungary would have Belgrade. But yeah, the defending side was reinforced by Croats, Czechs, and Italians, which I think is pretty interesting that Croats, Czechs, and Italians all came just to defend this city of Belgrade. That's why it's so important. But in the grand scheme of things, this siege isn't too important, and its brother, the 1456 siege, is basically the same siege but more important. So after the fall of Constantinople, which was in 1453, the Ottomans realized, well, we took an important city, why don't we take this other important city? And the siege lasted only 2 weeks. And the Ottomans would attack the siege. They would pretty much starve them out, was their plan. But they obviously failed. And John Hunyadi is a really important figure in this siege, as Serbia was going to fall in 3 years, 1459. So the Serbian army was pretty much at its weakest here, and the Hungarians pretty much carried it. And John Hunyadi was leading the Hungarian forces here, defending the city. And this was a really important victory for the Christians, as if this battle was won by the Ottomans, they could have easily steamrolled into the Hungary way earlier. See, this when they actually took it was in 1521. This is 70-year difference. Think about the repercussions of that. But yeah, this siege is really important. It had a lot of ripple effect on Europe, seeing as this was one of the first major Ottoman losses. Once they had obviously gained Constantinople, they lost this siege. Okay, so the next one is the 1521 siege of Belgrade, and this was when the Ottomans would siege the Hungarians, as the Serbs fell 60 years ago. And in this siege, this is a really interesting siege. The Ottomans would actually, their original plan was to attack Shabac, which is a nearby city across the Sava. And their plan was to take Shabac and then go to Buda. You know, Buda was the original capital of Hungary. Budapest is just the two cities. So their plan was to take Shabac and then go to Buda. But one of the Ottoman generals said that if they would completely ignore Belgrade, then the Hungarian forces could just cut them off. And so their plan changed into attacking Belgrade. The siege lasted for 2 months, and the Hungarians lost. And this is a really crucial loss for the Hungarians, as they would soon lose at another battle. This would pretty much just spell the destruction of Hungary, their demise, as only 20 years later, the Hungarians would fall to the Ottomans in 1541. The Hungarians would fall to the Ottomans. So this battle pretty much sealed the fate for Hungary in pretty much all of history. They lost to the Ottomans, and then they were captured by the Habsburgs. And I think this is a really important battle. I really like the fact that the original target quickly changed. It was pretty much in the nick of time that the original target changed, and that is a really interesting alternate history scenario. What if the Ottomans attacked Shabat instead, and then suffered another major loss after the loss in 1456? But yeah, I think this is definitely a B tier, pretty much on the same level as this one. But yeah. Alright, so the next three sieges are all part of the Great Turkish War, which lasted from 1683 to 1699. And in this war, as you can see, there were three battles, but the Belgrade switched its which nation held it three times. And first was the 1688 siege of Belgrade, which lasted only a month, and it resulted in the Habsburg victory, a decisive Habsburg victory by Maximilian II Emmanuel, who was the Elector of Bavaria. This victory was really important because just a few years prior, the Holy League had, I don't know how to say this, had given a decisive blow to the Ottomans. Yes, a decisive blow to the Ottomans, the Holy League had given, and their next objective was to take Belgrade, again, a really important city in the Balkans, which pretty much gives you control over most of Serbia and the Smederevo Sanjak. But yeah, and they succeeded in their offensive. But only 2 years later, the Ottomans would take it. Now, why? Why did they ever take it so quickly? Well, as some of you may know, only 20 days after the siege of 1688, the 9 Years' War would begin. And it began with Louis XIV invading the Rhineland. And this would obviously cause the Habsburgs to be distracted with France. And the Ottomans would swiftly regain Belgrade. And this would be a decisive loss to the Habsburgs, as they had given a major defeat to the Ottomans in the Holy League, and now Belgrade as well, but their advantage was lost because of the 9 Years' War. Louis XIV invaded the Rhineland. So these two sieges, I think, are pretty good. I like them. I wouldn't say any of them are really too important. The Ottomans taken 1690. I think it's important, but the 1688 one is also C. None of these are really too important, but the 1693 one, this one is only the result of the fact that the Ottomans the Habsburgs were in the middle of the 9 Years' War, and and a divergent army attacked the Ottomans. This is not important at all. It's a divergent army which lost insanely quickly. So yeah, this one's going into F tier. It doesn't go any further. It was really hard to research on this. But yeah, that was the three sieges during the Turkish War, the Great Turkish War. All right, so the next battle, the next siege is the 1717 siege of Belgrade, of course, by the Austrians to the Ottomans. Yeah, half of these are just the Austrians and the Ottomans, but they had a rivalry for like 400 years. But yeah, this siege only lasted 3 days, which is absolutely remarkable, I think. But the background actually makes a lot of sense why it lasted three days. So the Austrians and the Ottomans, of course, had their Austro-Turkish War, like always. But the Austrians were able to outmaneuver the Ottomans. And once the Ottomans had sent their relief army to Belgrade to be able to defend it, the Austrians actually cut them off, cut the Ottoman relief army off and routed it, which caused the Belgrade fortress to fall pretty quickly. So this might not seem like too important of a battle, of a siege, maybe D tier, C tier, but the repercussions are insane. This defeat led to the complete Austrian rulership of Hungary, Banat, and Belgrade. This battle, this absolutely decisive Austrian victory, led to the annexation of Hungary, Banat, and Belgrade. So I think this is absolutely deserving of the A tier. Just the repercussions and the showing of the Austrian military expertise. I think it deserves the A tier. Probably not S tier, because it doesn't have too much repercussions. Like, it's not S tier, but it's A tier for sure. Okay, so now the siege of 1739. In this siege only lasted 2 months. And the reason why this siege lasted 2 months, which is actually surprising, it lasted 2 months, is, of course, you already had the Austrians having direct control over Belgrade for 20 years. But the reason behind this siege is because the Austro-Turkish War, again, in 1739, the Austrians and Turks had a battle. There's a battle in Grodzka. Now, Grodzka is a town really near Belgrade. It's, I think, only 10 kilometers from Belgrade. And once the Ottomans had won at this Battle of Grodzka, since the only way you can attack Belgrade really is by land from the south, and Grodzka is at the south, the Ottomans had a clear attack, a clear way to Belgrade. And the battle lasted only 2 months. And after 2 months, the Austrian commander, Count Wallace, ordered the burning of the Nubian fleet, and then sued for peace. So, and the Ottomans obviously retook Belgrade. But yeah, this is not that important of a battle. It's still pretty important, seeing as how the switching of the Austrians and the Turks, but I'd put it in S tier. It's not that important. Now the 1789 one, since we're already approaching the 19th century, you would expect for it to be probably really important, but no, not at all. The Austrians won against the Ottomans. It was a 3-week siege, and the Austrian army, even though they won the siege, they suffered a lot due to illnesses, and so they had to sue for peace in 1791 and gave up Belgrade. Just 2 years later, they gave up Belgrade. And so nothing changed from their siege. Their army just died. But, one thing that happened, I think that was a consequence of this, was that a lot of these Austrian soldiers who fought in the siege of Belgrade in 1789 was that they actually became commanders in the Napoleonic Wars. So I guess it's not F tier, but it's still not important at all because they gave the city away right away. So yeah, that goes in D tier. Okay, so now we have the 1806 siege of Belgrade. Now this one is part of the larger Serbian uprising, the first Serbian uprising, which actually the quote-unquote siege lasted since 1804, as some Serbian armies were stationed outside of Belgrade since 1804. But after big victories at Mishar and Deligrad, the Serbian armies found their new objective to be to retake Belgrade, of course. And pretty much all of the commanders, which were the great commanders that led the victories on Mishar and Deligrad, came to Belgrade to liberate the city. And so the Belgrade fortress, basically the only way to get in was through the gates. And since the Serbs didn't have enough cannons to destroy the Ottoman positions at the top of the fortress, they had to get in through the gates. And so a Serbian commander called Konda Bimbasha, who spoke Turkish, tricked the Ottoman soldiers at one of the gates, who ended up opening the gate for him and his army. And then Konda Bimbasha and his army massacred the Ottoman soldiers and went in to help the Serbs fighting to open the other gates. And after that great victory, we were able to finally liberate Belgrade after 5 centuries of Ottoman rule. And this was a major morale booster for Serbia and the Serbian people and the Serbian army, who were then able to lead many more victories until the end of the uprising. It basically led to the independent state of Serbia, the autonomy of Serbia, and then the independence of Serbia. So maybe not too important for world politics, but this is of course S tier for Serbian history. It's a really important battle, just like the rest of the first uprising. I'll probably make more things about the uprising on essays probably. But I really think this is a really a topic that people should read and investigate. And then of course we have the 1944, not really a siege, but more of an offensive on Belgrade, where the United Red Army and the Yugoslav partisans would go in 1944 to retake Belgrade, and of course, as we all know, they won. But this isn't too much of an important thing during the World War II, since the Russians had already taken half of Hungary, Romania, half of Poland during this time. So this is not too much important on the world stage, but for Serbian history, for Yugoslavia, this was a really big morale booster, and helped the Yugoslavs deliver a final blow to the Ustaše and the Nazis in Yugoslavia. So yeah, this will be my final tier list for all of the sieges of Belgrade, with the years and the attacking and defending side, and if the siege did succeed or not. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I hope this is good enough.